Have you ever noticed how some people enter a room and everything shifts? They don't need to speak. They don't need to announce themselves. Something about them, an invisible weight, a presence, makes others pause. It's not arrogance. It's not loudness. It's something deeper, something quieter, respect. But here is the question, how do you arrive at that point? How do you embody a respect so real, so undeniable, that it whispers louder than words ever could? Most of us are taught that respect must be demanded, negotiated, or begged for, that if you talk enough, convince enough, or project enough, you will finally earn it. But the truth is, respect slips through the hands of those who chase it. The people who carry respect like an aura don't speak to prove. They exist in alignment. Their silence speaks, their presence commands, and perhaps this is the paradox you've always felt. The louder someone is about their worth, the less worthy they truly seem. Respect is not something you argue for, it's something you radiate, and the moment you stop needing it, the world begins offering it to you without hesitation. Most people spend their entire lives misunderstanding what respect actually is. They grow up believing that if they can speak well enough, argue hard enough, or project confidence in the right way, they will finally earn the admiration they crave. From a young age, we are conditioned to equate respect with applause, with recognition, with the nods of others who approve of us. But that belief is built on fragile ground, because it assumes respect is something that other people can give or take away at will. And if respect depends entirely on others, then it is never truly yours. It becomes something borrowed, something conditional, something as unstable as the moods and opinions of the crowd. This is the first great conflict. The chase for respect outside of yourself will always end in exhaustion, because no matter how much you try, the ground you are running on will always shift beneath you. Philosophers, rulers, and thinkers throughout history have wrestled with this dilemma. Machiavelli observed that being feared often creates quicker results than being loved, because fear forces people to behave. But even he admitted that fear-based respect does not last. It erodes trust and breeds resentment. In the modern world, the same principle plays out in quieter ways. Leaders who control with threats may achieve short-term compliance, but the moment their back is turned, loyalty evaporates. Respect born from performance or power has an expiration date. It might look strong, but it is hollow inside, relying on external reinforcement to survive. This reveals the paradox. When you seek respect through dominance or appearance, you may receive obedience or attention, but you do not receive the kind of respect that lingers in silence when words are gone. The respect you thought you had dissolves as soon as the audience leaves. Think about how society subtly shapes this chase. From media to education to family expectations, the message is constant. You must prove your value. Speak louder, dress sharper, acquire symbols of success, and people will treat you differently. And yes, sometimes it works. For a while, a person who drives an expensive car or wears a perfect suit might catch the eyes of strangers, might feel a temporary sense of elevation. But beneath the surface lies an uncomfortable truth. All of those signals are costumes, and costumes require constant maintenance. The car gets old, the fashion fades, the image cracks, and the moment the costume slips, so does the respect that was tied to it. This cycle traps people in a never-ending performance, where the fear of being exposed pushes them to layer on even more masks. The respect feels real while the performance continues, but deep down, there is always the gnawing anxiety that if the mask falls, so will the admiration. The conflict deepens when words themselves become tools of desperation. In conversations, you might notice how some people explain themselves endlessly, piling words upon words in an attempt to be understood, to be validated. Yet instead of commanding respect, they drain it. The more they explain, the more it sounds like they are pleading. On the other hand, those who can rest in silence, who don't rush to prove their point, seem to carry a weight that others lean toward. It is not the words themselves, but the energy behind them. When respect is built on needing approval, speech becomes frantic and restless. When respect is built on self-assurance, silence becomes powerful. This contrast shows how the pursuit of external validation creates weakness, while the release of that need creates strength. Respect cannot be begged for. The moment you ask for it, you have already lost it. There is also the psychological burden of comparison. In a world where images of success are broadcast daily through social media, people fall into the illusion that respect can be quantified by followers, likes, and public recognition. It seems like those with attention must also have respect. But attention and respect are not the same. Attention is cheap. It can be bought, manipulated, or faked. Respect, however, cannot be manufactured. It is sensed. And when a person chases attention believing it will bring respect, they end up emptier than before. This is why so many who appear admired on the outside confess to feeling hollow when the cameras are off. The conflict here is brutal. The world tells you to chase respect through visibility, but visibility often magnifies insecurity. The more you are seen, the more fragile your sense of worth becomes, unless it is rooted in something deeper than performance. This conflict is not only external but internal. Deep inside, there is a voice that knows when respect is real and when it is artificial. That voice whispers, when you compromise your values to win approval, when you say yes to things you don't believe in, when you bend yourself into shapes just to be liked. And no matter how much applause you receive, that inner voice grows restless, because respect cannot exist without integrity, and integrity cannot exist without truth. This inner battle is the hardest of all, because it is fought in silence. No one else sees it, yet it determines everything. If you lose that battle, if you betray your own self-respect, you can never truly hold the respect of others, no matter how polished your words or actions may seem. That is why so many outwardly successful people still feel unseen. They have never won the war within. The tragedy is that this conflict convinces people that respect is a performance to perfect, rather than a presence to embody. They spend their lives collecting symbols, practicing words, shaping appearances, but the respect they gather slips through their fingers like water. And each loss pushes them to chase harder, to speak louder, to perform longer, deepening the cycle. Respect remains elusive because it was never something external to begin with. It was always something internal, sensed but not spoken, radiated but not performed. The more one chases it in the world, the further they drift from the only place it truly grows, within themselves. There are moments in life when you can feel the fragile nature of respect most clearly, and they are often the moments when you try the hardest to be understood. Think back to the times you found yourself in an argument, repeating the same explanation in 5 different ways, desperately hoping the other person would see your point. The more you spoke, the more restless you became, and strangely, the less convincing your words felt. The person across from you may have nodded, or maybe they didn't, but what you sensed inside was a quiet erosion, an uncomfortable awareness that your effort was not commanding respect, but leaking it away. You left that conversation with a hollow feeling, realizing that all your energy had been poured out in trying to prove something that should not have required proof in the first place. Yet contrast that with another kind of moment, the one where you said almost nothing. Maybe someone challenged you, underestimated you, or even provoked you, and instead of rushing to defend yourself, you simply stood still in your presence. You looked them in the eye, not with anger, but with calm. And without saying a word, the energy shifted. They softened, or grew uneasy, or adjusted their tone. You didn't win them over with an argument. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't perform. What they responded to wasn't your words. It was the quiet certainty radiating from you. That kind of moment stays with you because it feels so radically different from the desperate chase of being understood. It feels like you no longer need permission to exist. The most transformative realizations often come in these small, unplanned experiences. There comes a time when you stop correcting people's misunderstandings about you. Someone may call you weak, lazy, arrogant, or cold, and instead of rushing to explain why they are wrong, you simply let the words pass. At first, this silence feels unbearable, almost like surrender. But slowly, something shifts. You notice that the world does not collapse if someone misunderstands you. You notice that your peace is not dependent on their version of your story. And strangely, those who truly matter begin to notice your silence. They begin to see strength in the way you do not flinch, in the way you do not scramble to protect your image. That moment becomes a quiet awakening. You realize respect is not built by controlling the story others tell, but by living in such a way that no story can shake your truth. There are also moments of social criticism woven into our experiences of respect. Think about how much of modern culture rewards noise. The loudest voices on social platforms often gather attention, but their words dissolve quickly because they are rooted in performance rather than depth. You may have noticed yourself scrolling past endless proclamations, each one demanding to be heard, and yet none leaving a lasting impression. Then you come across someone who speaks less but carries weight when they do. Their silence between sentences feels as powerful as their words. That contrast teaches you something. Respect is not in the volume of what is said, but in the presence behind it. And when you compare these experiences, you start to feel a deep discomfort with the culture of noise. You realize it is possible to be heard by many and respected by none. On a more personal level, the experiences that carve respect often involve walking away. There was likely a time when you stayed in conversations, relationships, or environments that drained you, believing that leaving would make you look weak or ungrateful. You stayed, you tried to explain, you tried to justify your choices, and all the while your respect for yourself eroded. Then one day, maybe without announcing it, you chose to leave, quietly. No long explanations, no dramatic exit, just a calm decision to no longer participate in what dishonored you. That single act, though silent, reshaped the way you saw yourself. For the first time, you realized that commanding respect doesn't always mean changing others. It means drawing boundaries that protect your own dignity. And strangely, the people who once ignored you began to look at you differently. They sensed the difference, even if they could not name it. Another experience that many carry is the moment of being underestimated. Perhaps you walked into a room, and people assumed you were irrelevant, unimportant, or incapable. You felt the sting of their dismissive glance, the subtle judgment in their tone. In the past, maybe you would have fought against it, worked overtime to prove them wrong, tried to force them to see your value. But when you reach a different stage of growth, you no longer feel the need to fight that battle. You let them underestimate you, and you focus instead on your own steady presence. In time, your actions, not your explanations, speak for you. And when the same people who once doubted you begin to treat you with quiet deference, you understand something profound. Respect earned through patience and authenticity is far stronger than respect demanded through noise. Perhaps the deepest and most relatable experience of all is the moment you finally respect yourself enough to be misunderstood. It sounds simple, but it feels like an earthquake inside. To no longer explain every choice, to no longer defend every decision, to no longer feel the need to align with everyone else's expectations. That is liberation. And the first time you taste it, you realize how much energy you wasted in the past, trying to chase approval. The silence you once feared becomes the silence you treasure, because it carries with it a new kind of authority. You are no longer negotiating your worth with the world. You are no longer chasing their recognition. You are living in a way that, without a word, demands the only kind of respect that lasts. The kind born from truth. True respect begins in the quietest places, the moments where no one is watching, where no applause can be heard and no validation can be earned. It is in those late hours of solitude, when you are left alone with your own thoughts, that the foundation of respect is formed. Many people run from this stillness, distracting themselves with noise and activity, fearing what they might discover in silence. But silence is not empty. It is the place where you meet yourself without disguise. When you sit long enough in that silence, you begin to realize that the person you are when no one else is around is the person the world ultimately encounters. If that version of you is fragmented, dishonest, or desperate for approval, then no amount of performance will conceal it. But if that version of you is whole, rooted, and unafraid of solitude, then that presence will radiate effortlessly. Respect, therefore, is not born in the crowd. It is born in solitude, in the secret battles of the heart that no one else ever sees. There is something about scars that teaches us what words cannot. Each scar, whether physical or invisible, carries a story of pain, survival, and endurance. And while society often teaches us to hide those scars, to cover them with polished images and flawless masks, true strength comes when you allow them to exist without shame. To walk through the world unafraid of your scars is to carry proof that you have endured, that you have suffered and risen again. People sense it. They may not know the details, but they feel the weight of someone who has been through storms and did not collapse. That weight commands a respect that polished perfection never could. Perfection is intimidating, but it is also fragile. Scars, however, reveal resilience, and resilience inspires reverence. It is not in pretending to be untouched by life that you awaken respect. It is in standing tall, even with the marks of your battles. There is also a profound power in the way silence itself becomes a form of speech. When a person no longer feels the need to defend, justify, or explain, their silence begins to speak volumes. It is not the silence of weakness or surrender, it is the silence of presence. Think of someone who listens fully without rushing to interject, who holds space without demanding attention. That kind of silence makes others lean in. It draws people closer, not through force, but through gravity. And the paradox is that silence only carries power when it is backed by inner certainty. Without inner strength, silence feels like avoidance. With inner strength, silence feels like authority. This is why the most respected individuals are not always the loudest. They are the ones whose quietness contains depth, whose pauses feel heavier than speeches, whose stillness commands more attention than noise ever could. The awakening comes when you realize that your worth was never in what you could prove, but in what you could embody. Many people spend years of their lives rehearsing arguments, preparing evidence, crafting strategies to convince others of their value. And then, one day, something shifts. You discover that you no longer need to play that game. You stop entering rooms with the mindset of, what must I do to be respected? And instead, enter with the calm presence of, I already am. That subtle shift changes everything. The way you walk, the way you breathe, the way you meet people's eyes. Others sense it immediately, because respect is not about dominating others, but about being unshakably aligned with yourself. And when you stop performing for the world begins to respond differently to you, because they can no longer sense desperation. They sense authenticity. Light is often used as a metaphor for truth, but it is not the blinding spotlight of performance that carries power. It is the subtle light that leaks through cracks. Imagine an ancient stone wall, weathered and scarred, with small fractures that allow rays of sunlight to shine through. That light does not announce itself with noise. It simply exists, undeniable and quiet. The same is true of people who awaken to their own strength. Their respect is not in their titles, possessions, or the perfection of their image. It is in the quiet way they carry themselves, the unforced way their presence fills a room. They don't need to prove their worth because their truth seeps through every gesture, every pause, every silence. And like light through cracks, that truth cannot be stopped, no matter how others might try to cover it. It is often said that true power is not about control, but about self-mastery. When you are no longer tossed about by every opinion, when you no longer flinch at every judgment, when you no longer need to be the loudest voice in the room, you begin to embody a rare kind of strength. This strength is not aggressive, not performative, not rooted in domination. It is calm, steady, and deeply rooted. People instinctively respect those who do not seem shaken by external storms, because in them they see something they themselves long for: stability. And that stability is only born when you face your own fears, your own insecurities, and stop letting them dictate your actions. Awakening to this truth is like realizing that you were never competing with others, you were only ever competing with your own restlessness. And when that battle is finally won, a profound peace radiates outward, commanding silent respect. In the end, the awakening is not dramatic. It does not arrive with thunder or applause. It arrives quietly, like dawn breaking after a long night. You begin to notice that you are no longer anxious when people misunderstand you, that you no longer feel the need to prove your worth in every interaction, that you are comfortable in silence, in solitude, in scars. This is the awakening that transforms presence into power. Respect without words is not about being untouchable. It is about being deeply human, yet unshaken. It is the strength of someone who has faced themselves, accepted themselves, and no longer needs the world to fill the gaps. And when you walk with that kind of stillness, when you carry yourself with that kind of truth, the world responds in the only way it can, with respect that does not need to be asked for, because it is already earned. The journey toward commanding respect without words always circles back to one truth: the revolution begins within. The world teaches us to collect external signs of worth, but the deeper you go, the more you realize that all those things fade, The applause stops, the titles lose meaning, the recognition becomes yesterday's news. What remains is the self you meet in silence, the one who either stands tall or crumbles when the noise dies down. Empowerment is not found in teaching others how to see you. It is found in teaching yourself how to no longer need their sight. When you finally reach that place where your worth is not tethered to the opinions around you, respect begins to radiate without effort. It is the kind of presence that requires no announcement, because presence itself becomes the announcement. In that state, you stop seeking, you stop performing, and you start being. And being is infinitely stronger than proving. There is a profound freedom in realizing that you don't need to convince anyone of your value. Think about how much energy is wasted each day trying to explain, justify, or demonstrate something that should never require an argument. You twist your words, rehearse your image, polish your performance, all to be seen in a certain light. And yet the people who leave the deepest impressions on us are rarely the ones who explain themselves endlessly. They are the ones who simply existed in their truth and let that truth speak silently. The conclusion is clear. The greatest authority you can carry is not found in volume but in alignment. When you embody your truth with quiet certainty, people feel it in ways they cannot even articulate. Respect flows toward you not because you asked for it, but because you no longer need to. When you live this way, something shifts in the way you move through the world. You stop entering rooms trying to read the temperature, trying to adjust yourself to fit what others expect. Instead, you walk in carrying your own climate, your own gravity, your own groundedness. People sense it. Some may be drawn to it, some may resist it, but all will feel it. That is what commanding respect without words really means. You do not bend yourself to the noise of the crowd. You stand as you are, and the world must decide how to respond. And the remarkable thing is, even resistance eventually transforms into acknowledgement. Even those who do not like you cannot deny the quiet power of someone who refuses to be shaken. Respect then becomes less about agreement and more about recognition. Recognition of something solid, unmovable, undeniable. It is important to understand that this is not about perfection or control. To command respect without words is not to become untouchable or flawless. It is to become unashamedly human. It is to carry your scars without apology, to hold your silence without fear, to know your worth without needing validation. This kind of strength does not glitter in the spotlight. It glows in the quiet corners, in the pauses, in the stillness of presence. The empowerment lies not in becoming more than human, but in fully embracing your humanity without flinching. Because people do not respect the masks, they respect the courage it takes to live without them. And when you no longer perform for approval, when you no longer negotiate your worth with the world, you step into a freedom that cannot be faked. It is the kind of freedom that others recognize instinctively, even if they cannot explain why. What makes this reflection truly empowering is the realization that nothing external is required to begin. You don't need more wealth, more followers, or more recognition. You don't need the perfect words, the perfect timing, or the perfect performance. What you need is the courage to stop grasping outwardly and start standing inwardly. That shift is invisible to the world at first, but it is undeniable to you, and the moment you embody it, the world eventually catches up. They may not say it out loud, but they feel it when you no longer chase, when you no longer beg, when you no longer seek. Respect begins to surround you like air, not because you demanded it, but because you became the kind of person who does not need to. This is the quiet paradox of life. The less you seek respect, the more naturally it comes. In the end, the call to action is not loud, not dramatic, not staged. It is silent. It whispers to you in the pauses, in the solitude, in the quiet courage of your own heart. It says, stop trying to be seen, and instead see yourself. Stop trying to be understood, and instead understand yourself. Stop trying to prove, and instead embody. This is the revolution, not outward validation but inner transformation, and when that transformation takes root, when your silence begins to carry more weight than your words, when your presence speaks before you do, you will find that you no longer walk into rooms trying to be respected. You will walk into rooms already carrying respect within you, and the world will have no choice but to reflect it back. That is how you command respect without saying a word. AMA.